Imagine waking up on the morning of the most important day of your entire existence, knowing that before the sun sets, you're supposed to commit murder. Not just any murder, the assassination of the most powerful being in your world. An Alpha King. The ruler of all werewolf kingdoms, revered and feared by millions. And the worst part, you didn't choose this. Curse chose you. My name is Branwen, and this is the story of how I became the most dangerous weapon in the supernatural world, all while falling completely, desperately, impossibly in love with the very man I was destined to destroy. But before you go anywhere, I need you to do something for me. Because this story, this truth I'm about to share with you, deserves to be heard by the right people. By people who understand that fate isn't always cruel. Sometimes it's merciful in ways we can't comprehend. So I need you to tell me something. Tell me the city you are watching from, so that I can send you a hug from my heart to yours. Comment that city below because I want to know where my listeners are when they hear my truth. Let me connect with you across whatever distance separates us. Because you're about to hear something that will change how you see destiny, magic, and love forever. 3 weeks before the Alpha King's coronation ceremony, my grandmother died. Not from natural causes. From a curse so dark, so ancient, that even the Council of Elders couldn't fully explain it. She was killed by her own blood sister, my great-aunt Gwyneth, a woman I'd never met, a woman who'd been exiled from our pack 50 years before I was born. The feud started over something ridiculously simple. Prophecy. Man. A misunderstanding that turned into generations of hatred so thick you could see it in the air like smoke. My grandmother was the stronger of the two sisters. She won the battle for the alpha position. She won the heart of the man they both loved. Gwyneth was cast out, forced to live in exile in the frozen mountains of the north, stripped of her pack, her powers diminished, her life reduced to nothing but cold stone and bitterness. For 50 years she festered in that isolation. And then, somehow, in the days before my grandmother's death, she found a way to perform the darkest magic known to our kind. Binding curse. A soul spell that connected me, innocent, undeserving me, to a mission of blood and death. When my grandmother collapsed, I was there. I was 15 years old, learning to prepare herbs for the winter, and I watched her fall like a tree struck by lightning. The room filled with a silver mist that reeked of sulfur and ancient rage. And when she opened her eyes one last time, she looked directly at me, her eyes black as midnight, and she spoke in a voice that wasn't her own. The debt passes to the daughter of the daughter. When the new Alpha King is crowned, when the words of power are spoken, when the moon reaches her fullness, you will kill him, Branwen. You will strike him down, or your entire pack will burn in flames that no water can extinguish. Then she died. And I stopped being Branwen Karras, the girl who loved flowers and books and quiet mornings by the stream. I became Branwen the Cursed. The girl carrying a death sentence in her very bones. The next 3 weeks were chaos. The pack grieved. My mother, devastated by the loss of her own mother, barely left her chambers. My father tried to comfort us, but how do you comfort someone when that someone is ticking like a time bomb? I went to the council. I told them everything. Elder Daffod listened to me with such sympathy. His ancient eyes full of understanding and sorrow. He was the one who explained the full scope of what was happening. The curse wasn't just a threat. It was a magical contract written in the language of the first wolves. It couldn't be broken by ordinary means. It could only be severed by either completing the task, killing the Alpha King, or by something far more impossible. True love, Elder Daffod said, and I thought he was mocking me. A bond so pure, so powerful, that it breaks through the very fabric of dark magic. But Branwen, we must be realistic. An Alpha King will have many who love him. His family, his court, his subjects. That's not what I mean. I mean a love that sees you, knows you completely, and chooses you anyway. I mean a mate bond. A connection forged in the supernatural world that transcends everything. I laughed at him then, actually laughed in the face of impossible odds. Because the idea that I would meet someone, let alone the most powerful werewolf in the world, and that he would somehow fall in love with me while I was literally cursed to murder him seemed like the punchline to a cosmic joke. What are my other options? Yes. Elder Daffod was quiet for a long time. You could run. Leave the pack. Distance yourself from everyone you love. The curse is tied to your bloodline and your presence here. And if I run, then you live, but your pack faces punishment. Gwyneth was clear about that. And she has enough power, even in exile, to make good on that threat. So there I stood. Kill the Alpha King. Fall in love with the Alpha King and hope he loves me back. Or sacrifice my entire pack's safety to save my own conscience. None of these options seemed real. The day of the coronation was the most beautiful day I'd ever seen. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, mild temperature, a gentle breeze that smelled of pine and wildflowers. Exactly the kind of day that makes you believe in magic, even when magic is coming to destroy you. The pack gathered in the great clearing, a massive valley that could hold thousands. Humans thought it was just a remote forest location, perfect for elaborate Renaissance fairs and costume gatherings. They had no idea it was the most sacred ground in our world. Werewolves from dozens of packs, from every kingdom across the globe, had come to witness the crowning. The old Alpha King, Aldrich II, had ruled for 30 years, and now his son was taking the throne. Everyone spoke of him with reverence and a little bit of fear. I stood near the back of the gathering, wearing a simple silver dress my mother had made for me. The color was supposed to bring out the strength in my lupin nature, she'd said. The dress had certain protective runes stitched into the hem, meant to keep me safe and grounded. If only they could protect me from myself. My friend Saren found me in the crowd. She was smaller than me, all graceful movements and kind eyes, with hair the color of chestnuts. She'd been my best friend since childhood, and she was the only one besides my parents who knew about the curse. She knew I was supposed to die today, either by my own hands' consequences or by the consequences of my inability to complete the task. "How are you holding up?" she whispered, squeezing my arm. "I'm not," I admitted. "I can barely breathe." "Then let's get you some water. Here, come with me. We can move closer to the front and you can." She never finished her sentence. The horns sounded. Long, deep, resonant sounds that you could feel vibrating through your bones and into your very soul. The crowd erupted into movement, pressing forward, and Saren pulled me along. That's when I first saw him. Calyx Reese ap Gwyneth emerged from the ceremonial tent, and I literally forgot to breathe. Not because he was handsome, though he was devastatingly, unfairly handsome. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the kind of muscular frame that came from centuries of magical power and physical training. His hair was dark, almost black, and his eyes were a piercing silver that seemed to hold the light of the moon itself. But it wasn't his physical beauty that stole my breath. It was the aura that surrounded him. The sheer presence of him. Every atom of my being responded to him the way a compass responds to north. My wolf, the part of me that was animal and instinct, immediately recognized him as something other. Someone important. Someone powerful. Someone dangerous. He wore traditional ceremonial robes, deep blue and black, embroidered with silver wolves in mid-leap. A crown of silver and moonstone sat on his head, and in his hands, he carried the Alpha Scepter, a staff that had been passed down through his family for 1,000 years. As he walked toward the ceremonial stone at the center of the clearing, his silver eyes swept across the crowd, and they stopped on me, locked on me. For a moment that felt like an eternity, he stared directly at me, and I felt my heart do something it had no business doing. It didn't race in fear. It raced in recognition. He recognized something in me. Or I recognized something in him. Saren squeezed my arm so hard she nearly cut off my circulation. "Oh my goddess," she breathed. "Did you see that? He's looking at you. The Alpha King is looking at you." "I know," I whispered back. "Oh goddess, I know." The elder conducting the ceremony began to speak, performing the traditional rites that had been performed at every coronation for thousands of years. He spoke of duty and responsibility, of the burden that comes with a crown, of the oath that binds an alpha to their people. The gathered werewolves were silent, respectful, watching as history unfolded. I stood frozen, my hand shaking in Saren's grip. The curse pulsed through my veins like a heartbeat. I could feel it working like a mechanism slowly ticking toward completion. During the coronation ceremony. He'd said during, not after. So there had to be a window. A moment of vulnerability when the magic was being transferred. When the old power was passing to the new. That was when I was supposed to strike. That was when I would feel the irresistible compulsion to kill him. The ceremony reached its crescendo. The elder raised his hands to the sky, and ancient words of power, the language of the first wolves, began to flow from his mouth. The very air seemed to thicken with magic. I could see it now, shimmering like heat waves, connecting calyx to the earth, to the moon, to every werewolf in the world. My hand moved without my permission. I didn't have a weapon, but I didn't need one. As a wolf, my claws could extend to supernatural sharpness. As I felt the curse seizing control of my muscles, I began to transform. My bones started to shift, my form beginning to split between human and wolf. This was it. The moment. The point of no return. And then something extraordinary happened. Calyx felt it. Somehow, impossibly, he felt my intention before I even fully completed it. He turned away from the ceremony, away from the elder conducting the sacred rites, and he looked directly at me. Our eyes met for the second time, and this time, his silver gaze burned with recognition. Not fear. Not anger. Understanding. He knew. Somehow, the Alpha King knew that I was cursed. That I was about to attack him. And instead of calling for my arrest, instead of striking me down with his newfound power, he did something that would change the course of my entire existence. He walked toward me. The crowd gasped. The ceremony stopped dead. The elder's words of power hung unfinished in the air. Everyone watched as the newly crowned Alpha King of all werewolves walked away from his coronation to approach a strange girl at the back of the gathering. Saren stepped back instinctively, leaving me standing alone. Calyx's footsteps were measured and deliberate. Every movement had grace and power. When he reached me, he was close enough that I could smell him. Pine and wood smoke and something wild and ancient. "You," he said, and his voice was deep and resonant, like the horns that had announced his arrival. "You came here intending to kill me." It wasn't a question. I couldn't lie to him. The curse wouldn't allow it. "Yes," I whispered. "Why?" Told him. Standing there in front of thousands of witnesses, with the elder staring at us in confusion and the entire gathered werewolf community watching, I told him about Gwyneth and grandmother and the curse that bound my soul to his death. He listened without interrupting, his silver eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, I expected him to call the guards, to have me arrested, imprisoned, or executed on the spot. Instead, he reached out and took my hand. The moment his skin touched mine, the curse shrieked. It actually shrieked. I could hear it like a sound inside my mind, like the dying wail of something ancient and dark. It fought against what was happening, tried to maintain its hold, but something far more powerful was superseding it. A bond was forming. Right there, in front of everyone, in the middle of the coronation ceremony. Mate bond. The elder gasped. The crowd erupted in whispers that quickly turned into shocked exclamations. A mate bond between the new Alpha King and a girl cursed to murder him was unheard of. It was impossible. It was meant to be, Calyx said, speaking quietly enough that only I could hear him. Branwen, isn't it? Yes, I said, tears now streaming down my face as the curse began to shatter like glass inside me. How do you know my name? I dreamed of you, he said. For 3 months, I've been dreaming of a girl with dark hair and eyes like autumn leaves. I've been dreaming of you, and I never knew why. But now I do. The magic knew before we did. Our bond has been forming since before either of us was consciously aware of it. The curse, I said frantically. If we're bonded, if we're mates. The curse is breaking, he confirmed. I can feel it. It's trying to resist. But a mate bond is the strongest magic in our world, Branwen. Transcends everything. It supersedes curses and hexes and ancient magic. You are mine, and I am yours, and that darkness that was meant to destroy you. It's dissolving. Then, in front of the entire gathering, Calyx pulled me into his arms and kissed me. It was the kind of kiss that felt like coming home. Like recognizing something inside yourself that you didn't know was missing. It tasted like destiny and promise and the overwhelming sense that somehow, against all odds, everything was going to be all right. When we broke apart, the curse was gone. I could feel its absence, like the relief of taking off chains that have bound you your entire life. The dark presence that had been sitting on my chest since my grandmother's death had evaporated completely. "I don't understand," I said breathlessly. "How is this possible? How did we?" "The universe doesn't make mistakes, love," Calyx said, and I noticed he had a slight Welsh accent that made his words sound like poetry. "My mother used to say that fate weaves threads even when we can't see the pattern. Your great-aunt cursed you to destroy me, thinking that was what the magic dictated. But the magic is far older and far wiser than her hatred. It saw us before we saw each other. It began binding us together before we were even born." The elder stepped forward. His ancient face creased with a mixture of confusion and awe. "My Alpha King," he said, and his voice shook. We have never witnessed a mate bond form in the middle of a coronation ceremony." "Make it part of the ceremony," Calyx commanded, his arm around my waist, keeping me anchored to him. "This girl is my mate, and she will be recognized as such before all these witnesses. The curse that bound her to darkness has been broken by the power of our connection. Let the records reflect that on this day, the Alpha King Calyx Reese claimed his mate, Branwen Caris, and that their bond has restored peace and balance to the forces that were threatening our world." A roar erupted from the crowd, a sound that began as confused murmuring and built into a celebration so profound that it seemed to shake the earth itself. Werewolves throughout the gathering began to howl, a sound of joy and recognition. The mate bond was witnessed by all, confirmed by all, and celebrated by all. What followed was the most whirlwind 3 weeks of my life. The coronation ceremony was adjusted and continued, with me standing by Calyx's side as his mate. The traditional rituals were performed, and I was formally introduced to all the allied packs as the Alpha Queen, a title I never dreamed I would hold. The curse wasn't entirely gone, not right away. The threads of dark magic took several days to fully dissolve from my system. During that time, Calyx never left my side. He held me when the pain of the curse's dissolution racked my body. He spoke to me in low, steady tones, grounding me with the reality of our connection. We talked about his life as the future Alpha King. He'd known since birth that he would inherit the throne. He spoke of his dreams of unifying the packs, of establishing peace between humans and werewolves through careful management of our existence. He'd been trained his entire life for this responsibility, had sacrificed normal childhood experiences to prepare for the burden he now carried. And then he looked at me and said, "But none of it meant anything until I found you. I was going through the motions, Branwen, living a life I was supposed to live. And then suddenly you were there, and everything made sense." I told him about my life before the curse. How I'd loved reading about the old legends and the history of our kind. How I'd planned to become a healer, to study the medicinal plants that grow in our territory. How I'd been perfectly content with a simple, quiet existence. "You were supposed to be a healer," he said, running his fingers through my hair. "And you still can be. But now you'll heal as my partner, as my mate, as the Alpha Queen. You'll bring your compassion and your wisdom to our entire kingdom." My parents came to the formal reception that celebrated our bonding. My mother wept with relief. The knowledge that her daughter had been cursed had nearly destroyed her, and now watching that curse break and transform into the most beautiful love story she'd ever seen had restored her joy. My father, usually so reserved and dignified, actually cracked a smile wider than I'd ever seen him produce. "I always said you were special, Branwen," he said, kissing my forehead. "But I never imagined you'd end up as the Alpha Queen." Saren was beside herself with excitement. She'd been invited to stay at the Alpha King's palace for the celebration, and she followed me around like a gosling, asking 1,000 questions about Calyx, about the mate bond, about what it felt like to have magic recognize you as belonging to someone. It's like being seen, I tried to explain to her. For your whole life, you're only partially visible. You're wearing camouflage that blends you into the background. And then suddenly, someone sees you so clearly, so completely, that all the camouflage falls away. And instead of being terrified, you're relieved. You're home. Elder Daffod visited me privately, right before the final celebration. He brought with him an ancient book bound in leather that smelled of magic and time. I wanted you to understand something, he said, settling himself in a chair across from me in the palace library. The curse that was placed on you, I did some research. Your great-aunt Gwyneth performed it using magic that's far older than modern witchcraft. She used the language of the first wolves, the original magic from which all our power stems. But here's what's interesting. He opened the book to a page filled with symbols I didn't recognize. The curse she designed wasn't actually meant to kill your grandmother. It was meant to create a debt that would eventually balance itself. Curses of this magnitude, if they're created with pure darkness, without any element of intention toward eventual balance, they consume the caster. They destroy them from the inside. Is that what happened to Gwyneth? Yes. We believe so. She disappeared shortly after the curse was placed. We never found a body, but we found evidence that suggests she simply ceased to exist. The magic consumed her. But here's the remarkable part. I believe on some level she knew this would happen. I believe she performed the curse knowing it would cost her everything, and she did it hoping that it would set off a chain of events that would eventually make things right. I considered this. The idea that my great-aunt, trapped in her exile and consumed by hatred, had somehow engineered her own demise in hopes of creating a better future seemed both tragic and strangely beautiful. What about the curse she placed on me? Yes. What if I hadn't met Calyx? What if the mate bond hadn't formed? Then we would have needed to find another way, Elder Daffod said. There are countermeasures for such dark magic. Rituals and rituals that could have been performed. But they would have required a tremendous sacrifice. Someone would have had to willing give their life force to break the curse. I suspect that would have been me. I reached out and took his hand. Thank you, I said, for being willing to do that. For everything you've done. He squeezed my fingers gently. You were always meant for something great, Branwen. I think we all suspected it, even before the curse. The curse didn't make you important. It just illuminated what was already there. 6 months after the coronation, Calyx and I were officially married in a ceremony that was attended by werewolves from every continent. The celebration lasted 3 days and nights, with feasting and dancing and the sharing of ancient traditions from packs that rarely interacted with one another. I wore a white gown that my mother had spent months creating, embroidered with silver wolves and Celtic knots. Calyx wore formal robes of deep blue and black, with his family sigil embroidered across the chest, a silver wolf in mid-leap, the same insignia from his coronation robes. When he saw me at the altar, his silver eyes filled with tears. He took my hand and whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "You're biased," I whispered back, smiling. "Completely," he agreed. "And I don't care. I'd rather be biased about you than objective about anyone else." The ceremony was conducted by Elder Daffod, who performed the ancient rites that bound us together not just as mates, but as husband and wife in the traditional human sense. We wanted to honor both parts of our identity, the werewolf magic that connected us on a spiritual and supernatural level, and the human tradition of marriage that had meaning in the wider world. After the ceremony, during the reception, I found myself alone with Calyx for just a moment, stepping away from the dancing and festivities to catch our breath. "I want to tell you something," he said, pulling me into a quiet corner of the palace gardens. "When I was a child, I was a lonely boy. I had everything a child could want: power, privilege, security. But I was isolated because of who I was supposed to become. Other children were afraid of me. Adults were always treating me with deference and distance. I never felt truly seen by anyone." He took my face in his hands. And then you appeared, and you were genuinely afraid of me at first, not because of my status or my power, but because of a curse you were carrying. And instead of hiding that fear or pretending it didn't exist, you were honest about it. You were yourself, completely and without apology. You taught me that authenticity is the most powerful magic there is, Branwen. That showing your true self to someone, letting them see your darkness as well as your light, is what creates real connection. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into that kiss, gratitude and love and the overwhelming sense of being finally, completely understood. A year after our mate bond formed, I discovered I was pregnant. The doctor confirmed it was a boy, and Calyx was over the moon with joy. We spent months preparing the nursery, choosing names, discussing what kind of father he wanted to be. I want him to know, Calyx said, that being powerful doesn't mean being lonely. I want him to understand the responsibility that comes with our position, but I also want him to know that he can be vulnerable with the people he loves. I want him to learn from us, from how we found each other against impossible odds. Our son was born on the night of a full moon, as was tradition for our kind. We named him Gwyneth Carasapi Calyx, honoring both of our Welsh heritage and our family's history. He was beautiful and powerful even as a newborn, with his father's silver eyes and my dark hair. Holding him in my arms for the first time, I thought about the curse that had brought me to this moment. I thought about Gwyneth, my great-aunt, and the hatred that had consumed her. I thought about how that darkness had transformed into light, how the magic that was supposed to destroy me had instead been the mechanism that brought me my soul mate. Thank you, I whispered to whatever forces in the universe had orchestrated this journey. Thank you for seeing past the curse to the love that was possible. So here I am telling you this story knowing that it sounds impossible. A girl cursed to murder a king. A mate bond that transcends dark magic. A love that saved us both. The truth is, I've learned something through all of this that I want to share with you. We spend so much of our lives looking at the obstacles in front of us, seeing only the curse, only the danger, only the darkness. We tell ourselves the story of how impossible things are, how unfair life is, how the universe is against us. But what if the universe isn't against us? What if, like Elder Daffod said, the magic, whatever that means for you, whether it's God or fate or simple chance, is actually weaving threads we can't see? What if the obstacles we face are actually preparing us for something beautiful? I was cursed to kill. Instead, I learned about the power of choice. I was forced to stand before the Alpha King as an assassin. Instead, I found my soul mate. I lived in fear for weeks. Now I live in joy beyond anything I could have imagined. The curse didn't destroy me. It delivered me to my destiny. And I think that's true for all of us in different ways. We all have curses. Some magical, some just the ordinary curses of life. Bad childhoods. Impossible situations. Overwhelming fear. Circumstances that seem designed to break us. But we also all have the capacity to transform those curses into something else. To let them be the catalyst for change instead of the end of our story. Calyx used to be a lonely boy trapped in a gilded cage of responsibility. I used to be an ordinary girl wanting nothing more than a quiet life. The curse was supposed to destroy us both. Instead, it brought us together, and together we've built something beautiful. We've created a kingdom where humans and werewolves can coexist. We've established laws that protect our people while keeping us hidden from the humans who would try to exploit us. We've built a family based on love and understanding. And every night when I lie next to Calyx, feeling our son sleeping peacefully in the nursery just down the hall, I'm amazed by the journey that brought us here. I'm grateful for every moment of it, even the terrifying parts. Even the parts that seemed like the end of the world. You know what they say about mate bonds? They say they're forever. That once you find your person, once you're bound to them by that kind of magic, nothing in this world or any other can tear you apart. Death doesn't end a mate bond. Distance doesn't weaken it. Magic can't break it. Except, apparently, dark curses can eventually be transformed by it. Calyx and I have faced a lot since that day in the clearing. We've dealt with packs that didn't want to accept me as their alpha queen because I was an outsider. We've handled threats from human organizations that discovered our existence and wanted to weaponize us. We've navigated court politics that were far more complex than I ever imagined. We've raised our son and taught him about his legacy and his responsibility to our people. But through all of it, our bond has been the anchor. When everything felt chaotic and overwhelming, I just had to reach out and find his hand. I just had to look into his silver eyes and remember that we'd already survived the impossible. Everything else was manageable by comparison. The other thing they say about mate bonds is that they change you. Your personality, your instincts, your entire understanding of what you're capable of. All of it shifts when you find your mate. You're no longer complete as an individual. You're part of a unit, a whole, that's greater than the sum of your parts. I used to think that sounded like a loss of identity. I used to think it meant giving up who you were to become who someone else needed you to be. But I was wrong. Finding your mate doesn't diminish you. It amplifies you. All the things that are best about me. My compassion, my wisdom, my strength, my capacity to love. They're all stronger now because I'm channeling them towards something real and meaningful. Calyx makes me better, not because he changes me into someone else, but because he sees who I really am and loves me for it. That kind of unconditional acceptance creates a safety within which you can grow. I've started teaching classes on healing herbs to the younger members of our pack. I've written several books about werewolf history and culture that have become foundational texts for our educational system. I've established a sanctuary for wolves who've been injured or traumatized, where they can recover in peace and safety. I'm doing all the things I dreamed of doing as a girl before the curse, but I'm doing them with so much more depth and meaning because I'm doing them as the Alpha Queen, as Calyx's partner, as someone with the resources and position to actually make a difference. I want to talk about destiny for a moment because I think I've learned something important about it. For years, I believed that destiny was this fixed thing, that it was predetermined and inevitable, that either I would kill the Alpha King as the curse dictated, or I would fail and face the consequences. That there was no other option, no wiggle room, no way to change the fundamental trajectory that had been set for me. But I was wrong. Destiny isn't fixed. It's fluid. It's interactive. It responds to our choices and our actions. The curse said I had to kill the Alpha King. But destiny, the larger, greater destiny that Elder Daffod spoke of, didn't require that. Destiny required that I face the Alpha King. That was the point of intersection that was fated. What happened after that was determined by choice. I chose to tell the truth instead of striking in secret. Calyx chose to trust that truth instead of defending himself. We both chose to open ourselves to connection instead of retreating into fear. And in making those choices, we changed not just our own destinies but the destiny of our entire people. The kingdom has been at peace since our mating. The packs that were on the verge of fracturing have come together under Calyx's leadership. New alliances have been formed. Trade agreements have been established. We've created a network of information and mutual protection that keeps us all safer. None of that was inevitable. All of it could have been different if we'd made different choices. That's what I want you to understand. Yes, there are forces larger than us at work in the world. Yes, there are currents and tides and magical threads weaving through reality. But you're not a passive observer in your own life. You have agency. You have choice. And those choices matter. The curse tried to make me a passive instrument of dark magic, a weapon to be wielded by forces beyond my control. But I rejected that narrative. I stood up and told my truth. And in doing so, I reclaimed my agency. That's how I escaped the curse. Not by running from it or hiding from it, but by confronting it directly and choosing something different. I know that many of you listening to this story are facing your own curses, your own impossible situations, your own circumstances that seem designed to break you. Maybe you're trapped in a career that doesn't fulfill you. Maybe you're in a relationship that's slowly destroying your spirit. Maybe you've been labeled as broken or damaged or unlovable, and you're starting to believe it. Maybe you've been through trauma that's left you convinced that you can't be happy or whole. Maybe you're facing discrimination or prejudice that makes you feel like you don't belong anywhere in the world. These are the modern curses. They're not magical, they're not supernatural, But they're no less real and no less devastating than the dark magic that bound me. And I want to tell you what I've learned. I want to tell you that these curses don't define your destiny. They're circumstances, yes. They're difficult situations that require strength and courage to navigate, absolutely. But they're not your whole story. Your whole story includes choice. It includes the possibility of change and transformation. It includes the potential for meeting someone, a person or a community, or even just a version of yourself that's more authentic, who sees you completely and loves you anyway. It includes the possibility of taking that curse and transforming it into something meaningful. Calyx's responsibility as the Alpha King used to feel like a burden to him, something that isolated him and kept him from being fully himself. But after meeting me, after falling in love with me, that responsibility transformed. It became an opportunity to build something beautiful. It became a way to express his love and protect the people he cares about. The curse didn't go away, but it stopped being a curse. It became his purpose. That can happen for you too. Whatever burden you're carrying, whatever weight is pressing down on your shoulders, it has the potential to become something meaningful. Not through magic, but through the choice to transform it. One of the biggest lessons I've learned since becoming the Alpha Queen is about the power of vulnerability. I think we live in a world that teaches us vulnerability is weakness. That showing your pain, your fear, your doubts is somehow beneath us. That we should project strength and confidence at all times, even when we're falling apart inside. But I don't believe that anymore. When I told Calyx about the curse, I was terrified. I was standing before the most powerful being in my world, and I was confessing that I'd come to his coronation with the intention of murdering him. I was showing him the absolute worst thing about myself. The darkness that had been placed inside me, the betrayal that had been forced into my soul. I expected rejection. I expected judgment. I expected him to recoil from me or have me arrested. Instead, he saw me. He saw past the curse to the person underneath. He saw my fear and my desperation and my unwillingness to hurt him, and he loved me anyway. That vulnerability, that willingness to be completely honest about the worst thing in my life, was what created the opening through which our mate bond could form. If I'd tried to hide the curse, if I'd attempted to complete the murder and pretend everything was normal, none of this would have happened. The darkness would have consumed me from the inside out, just like it consumed Gwyneth. I would have become a tragedy instead of a love story. Vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the most powerful tool you have. It's how you create real connection. It's how you allow people to truly see you and choose you anyway. It's how you transform curses into miracles. I encourage you, as you're listening to this, to think about the vulnerabilities you've been hiding. The truths you've been too afraid to tell. The parts of yourself you think are so broken that no one could possibly love them. And I want you to consider very carefully what might happen if you chose to be honest about them. I'm not saying it will be easy. I'm not saying that everyone will respond the way Calyx did. Some people will judge you. Some will turn away. That's part of the risk of being vulnerable. But some people, the right people, the ones meant to be in your life, will see you completely and love you anyway. And those people will change your life in ways you can't even imagine. Being Alpha Queen has been a journey of continuous learning and adaptation. When I was first thrust into the role, I had no formal training. I hadn't been born and raised to be a leader the way Calyx had been. I was just an ordinary girl who happened to fall in love with a king. But I think that's been one of my greatest strengths. I don't have generations of royal conditioning telling me how things have to be done. I can look at traditions that have existed for centuries and ask, is this still serving us? Is this still making sense? Is there a better way? One of the first things I did as Alpha Queen was establish a system of representation. The packs that made up our kingdom had always been governed hierarchically, with the Alpha King making decisions and the rest of us following. But I proposed a council system where representatives from each pack could voice their concerns and suggestions directly to the throne. Calyx was initially hesitant about sharing power, but he trusted me, and we implemented the system. It's been transformative. Issues that might have festered for years are now addressed immediately. Packs that felt voiceless now have platforms to speak. And decisions made by the throne are stronger because they're informed by the wisdom and experience of our entire people. I've also worked extensively on improving conditions for female werewolves. Historically, our kind has been deeply patriarchal. Women were expected to serve as mates and mothers, supporting the ambitions of the men in their lives while suppressing their own. I didn't want that to be my daughter's reality. We've established schools that educate both boys and girls equally. We've created opportunities for women to pursue careers in leadership, healing, combat, and every other field. We've reformed inheritance laws so that positions of power can be inherited by the most capable person, regardless of gender. We've created protections against domestic violence and established resources for women who need to escape abusive situations. Some of the older, more traditional members of the pack have resisted these changes. There have been arguments and debates and moments where I've questioned whether I was overstepping my authority. But Calyx has always stood by me, and the younger generation has embraced these changes enthusiastically. I think that's one of the most important things I've learned about creating change. You can't do it alone. You need people who believe in you and who are willing to support your vision even when it's scary or unconventional. You need people who love you so much that they're willing to take risks on your behalf. Calyx has always been that person for me. But it hasn't all been easy. There have been times when being Alpha Queen has been almost unbearably difficult. 2 years after Gwyneth was born, we discovered that there was a faction within our kingdom that was unhappy with Calyx's reforms. They called themselves the Traditionalists, and they believed that werewolves should remain hidden from humans at all costs, that we should never integrate into human society, that our kind was inherently superior and should dominate our territories without regard for human safety or autonomy. The Traditionalists staged an attack on a human village near our territory, hoping to provoke a response that would justify a full-scale war between our species. It was meant to be a false flag operation, a way to get the human military involved so that our existence would be exposed and we'd be forced to fight for survival. I was the one who discovered the plot. I was working in my healing sanctuary when one of our healers came to me with an injury he couldn't explain. A werewolf bite that was refusing to heal, marked with a symbol that was specific to the Traditionalist movement. When I questioned him, he broke down and told me everything. He'd been forced into the group, threatened with death if he didn't comply. They were planning something big, something that would change everything. When I told Calyx, he was devastated. Not because he hadn't suspected there was dissent. He'd always known there were packs resistant to his reforms, but because he'd hoped to lead through consensus and understanding rather than force. "We have to stop them," he said, his silver eyes blazing with determination. "But we have to do it carefully, Branwen. If we use too much force, if we seem oppressive in our response, we'll be proving the Traditionalists' point. We'll be reinforcing their narrative that we're tyrants hiding behind a facade of progress." So we developed a strategy. Calyx worked with the council to establish a fact-finding mission. We investigated the Traditionalists' claims and their motivations. We found that a lot of their anger stemmed from feeling left behind by rapid change, from economic displacement that had resulted from reforms that prioritized safety and ethics over profit, from fear of a future they didn't understand. Instead of simply crushing the rebellion, we created dialogue. We invited the Traditionalist leaders to the palace. We listened to their concerns without judgment. We explained our reasoning for the reforms we'd implemented. And we worked together to find compromises that could address their fears while maintaining the progress we'd made. It wasn't perfect. Some of the Traditionalists were too entrenched in their hatred to be reached. They're still imprisoned, still a threat. But many of them, once they understood that our reforms weren't meant to destroy their way of life but to evolve it, came around. Some have even become advocates for the changes we're implementing. That experience taught me that change isn't just about forcing people to conform to a new vision. It's about bringing them along with you. It's about understanding their fear and their resistance, validating what's real about their concerns, and then helping them see that there's a better path forward. Becoming a mother has been the most transformative experience of my life. When Gwyneth was born, I thought I understood love because of my mate bond with Calyx. But maternal love is something different entirely. It's fierce and overwhelming and terrifying in ways that romantic love isn't. I'm responsible for this little person's life, his growth, his development. I have the power to shape who he becomes. That's simultaneously the most beautiful and most terrifying responsibility I could possibly have. Gwyneth inherited both our magical abilities. He has my intuition and healing powers, but he also has Calyx's raw strength and dominion over lightning. Even as a small child, he could create tiny electrical sparks when he was excited or upset. We've had to install special protections in the palace to prevent him from accidentally burning it down during tantrums. But he's also gentle and thoughtful in ways that surprise us. He cries when he sees animals hurt. He comforts his younger sister when she's crying. He asks questions about our reforms and our vision for the kingdom, clearly thinking about what kind of leader he wants to be. I want him to grow up understanding that power isn't about domination or control. Power is about responsibility. It's about using your abilities to protect and serve the people you love and the community you're part of. It's about recognizing that being strong means being able to be vulnerable with the people you trust. I also want him to know his story. The story of how his parents met under impossible circumstances and found love anyway. The story of how a curse was transformed into a blessing. I think that's important for him to understand, that life is full of unexpected turns, that sometimes the worst things that happen to us become catalysts for the best things that follow. When Gwyneth is older, I'll tell him the full story of the curse. I'll explain to him that his mother was meant to be an assassin, and his father was supposed to be her target. And instead of tragedy, we created a love story. I'll tell him that this is proof that he has the power to transform his own life, that the circumstances of his birth don't dictate his destiny, that love is the most powerful magic in the universe. Our daughter, Branwen the younger, we call her Bran to distinguish her from me, was born 3 years after Gwyneth. She's a perfect blend of both of us, with my dark hair and Calyx's silver eyes. She's precocious and curious, constantly asking why things are the way they are and whether there's a better way to do them. I'm convinced she's going to be even more revolutionary than I've been as Alpha Queen. Calyx is an amazing father. He's patient and involved and genuinely interested in who our children are and who they're becoming. He makes time for them despite his enormous responsibilities as Alpha King. He plays with them, teaches them, reads to them at night. He's showing our son that being powerful and being loving aren't contradictory. They're complementary. I watch him with our children, and I'm reminded of why I fell in love with him in the first place. It's not just because of his physical beauty or his power, though those things certainly caught my attention. It's because of who he is as a person, his capacity for growth and change, his willingness to question traditions that aren't serving us, his commitment to building a kingdom based on love and understanding rather than fear and control. 5 years have passed since that day in the clearing when the curse was broken and our mate bond was formed. 5 years since I stood at the brink of committing murder and instead found my soul mate. I won't tell you that every day has been perfect. We've faced challenges that have tested us in ways we didn't expect. We've had arguments about leadership decisions. We've experienced grief and loss. Calyx's father passed away 2 years ago, and watching him mourn while trying to maintain his responsibilities as Alpha King was heartbreaking. But through all of it, our connection has held. Our mate bond has been the anchor that keeps us grounded. No matter what storms we're weathering, I can reach out and feel him there, steady and solid and completely committed to me and our family. That's the promise of a true mate bond. It's not that everything will be easy. It's that you won't have to face anything alone. It's that there's someone who knows you completely and chooses to stand beside you anyway. I think that's what everyone is looking for, isn't it? That person who sees you, really sees you, all your flaws and darkness and brokenness, and loves you anyway. That person who makes you feel like coming home every time they look at you. That person who brings out the best version of yourself just by believing in you. For me, that person is Calyx. I can't imagine my life without him. Not because I was cursed to kill him or because fate forced us together, but because choosing him every single day feels like the most natural thing in the world. As I finish telling you this story, I want to leave you with some messages. Messages I wish someone had told me before the curse, before everything fell apart. First, if you're going through something difficult right now, I want you to know that it doesn't define you. The circumstances of your life, good or bad, are just circumstances. They're the raw material from which you build your life, but they're not your life itself. You have the power to take those circumstances and transform them into something meaningful. Second, if you're lonely, if you feel like no one sees you or understands you, I want you to know that your person is out there. Not necessarily a romantic partner. It could be a friend, a mentor, a community, a version of yourself that's more authentic. Your person or your people exist somewhere in this world, and they're looking for you just as much as you're looking for them. Don't give up on connection. Third, if you're afraid of being vulnerable, if you think your darkness or your damage is too much for anyone to accept, I want you to know that you're wrong. Yes, some people won't be able to accept your authentic self. But the people who matter, the people who are meant to be in your life, will see your truth and love you anyway. And that love will transform you in ways you can't even imagine. Fourth, if you're struggling with your identity or your purpose, if you feel like you don't belong anywhere, I want to encourage you to keep searching. Your place in the world exists. Your purpose is waiting for you. Sometimes it takes a curse to deliver us to our destiny, but the destination is always worth the journey. Fifth, if you're dealing with trauma or pain from your past, I want you to know that healing is possible. It's not linear. It's not quick. But it's possible. And as you heal, you'll find that your wounds become sources of wisdom and compassion. Your pain will allow you to help others in ways that someone who hasn't experienced that pain never could. Your curse becomes your gift. And finally, I want to tell you this. The most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Before you can truly love someone else, before you can accept their love, you have to love yourself. You have to see yourself the way Calix sees me, as someone worthy of love and respect and a beautiful life. That's the real magic, I think. Not the supernatural kind that bound me to Calix. It's the everyday magic of self-love and self-acceptance. It's the magic that allows you to show up as your authentic self in the world. It's the magic that transforms curses into blessings and creates connections that are truly worth the risk. I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity to share my story with you. These words have been held inside me for so long, and releasing them feels like releasing a burden I didn't even know I was carrying. When I was a cursed girl, convinced that I was going to be responsible for the death of the most powerful being in the world, I couldn't have imagined that I'd end up here. As the Alpha Queen, as a mate and mother and a woman who's building something beautiful. I couldn't have imagined that the curse would lead me to my soul mate, that the darkness would transform into light, that my life would become this fairy tale I used to read about in books. But here's the truth, and I want you to really hear this. Your life can become that too. Not the exact same story. Your curse is uniquely yours, your journey is uniquely yours, your love story will look completely different from mine. But you can transform your circumstances. You can find your people. You can build something beautiful. The universe isn't against you. I know that sometimes it feels like it is. I know that when you're in the middle of your curse, when you're carrying that weight and feeling that pressure, it's hard to believe that anything good can come from it. But I'm here to tell you that good can come from it. Miraculous, beautiful, unexpected good. All it takes is the choice to believe that transformation is possible. The willingness to be vulnerable enough to show your true self. The courage to reach out and create connection despite your fear. The commitment to keep moving forward even when everything inside you wants to give up. I was cursed to kill the Alpha King. Instead, I became his mate, his partner, his queen. Together, we're building a kingdom where werewolves and humans can coexist. Where women have equal power and voice. Where love is the foundation upon which all our decisions are made. And it all started with a curse. So if you're carrying a curse right now, whether it's literal or metaphorical, magical or everyday, I want you to know that it's not your ending. It's your beginning. It's the circumstances that are going to deliver you to the life you're meant to live, if you're brave enough to face them head-on and transform them. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for being open enough to consider the possibility that your life, no matter how dark it seems right now, has the potential to become something miraculous. And I meant what I said earlier. Tell me the city you're watching from. Leave that comment down below. Tell me where you are in the world when you heard my story. I want to connect with you. I want to send you a hug across whatever distance separates us. Because we're all on this journey together, navigating our curses and seeking our mates and trying to build lives that matter. You matter. Your story matters. Your presence in this world matters. Never forget that. This is Branwen, Alpha Queen of the United Werewolf Kingdom, signing off. May your curses transform into blessings. May you find the people who see you and love you anyway. And may you build a life so beautiful that you look back on your darkest days and realize they were just the prologue to your greatest love story.